You know the sound of a shattering mirror, don't you? Not the loud, violent explosion that startles the neighborhood, but the quiet, hairline fracture that happens when you press just a little too hard against your own reflection. It is the sound of your own voice becoming a stranger's broadcast. You wake up, and before your feet even touch the cold floor, the performance begins. You adjust your posture, tighten the invisible strings, and paint on the expression of a person who has it all figured out. But beneath the ribs, where the breath hitches, there is a haunting stillness. You have become so adept at curating the version of yourself that the world expects, the composed, the efficient, the unflappable, that you have forgotten the texture of your own skin. You are not living, you are curating. And while the world applauds the masterpiece you present, you are slowly starving in the gallery, watching your real self fade into the beige wallpaper of your own making. The irony is, you fear that if you were to drop the act, if you were to let the mask slip, there would be nothing underneath, just a void, a shapeless mass of anxieties and unfinished thoughts that would terrify anyone who dared to look. The day moves in a blur of performative interactions. You laugh at jokes that feel like static, nodding rhythmically as if you were a clockwork mechanism synchronized to a tempo you loathe. Every interaction is a calculation. You measure the angle of your smile, the cadence of your affirmations, the precise amount of vulnerability to show to seem human, but never enough to seem weak. It is exhausting, a marathon run in heavy boots. When you are sitting in a meeting or standing in a crowded room, you are acutely aware of the distance between your physical form and your mind. You watch yourself from a vantage point just behind your own eyes, a silent witness to a tragedy you are both writing and starring in. You wonder if they can see the tremor in your hands, or if they are blinded by the sheen of the polish you apply so religiously every morning. Your mind is a cluttered attic, overflowing with repressed frustrations and the debris of thousands of small, unvoiced no's that you were too polite to utter. You replay conversations from 3 years ago, dissecting your own responses, wondering if you signaled too much anxiety or if you appeared too detached. It is a cycle of hypervigilance, a relentless state of overthinking that renders even the simplest joys indigestible. You reach for coffee, and you analyze the grip of your fingers on the ceramic. You walk down the street, and you monitor your gait, terrified that someone will notice the hesitation in your step. You are a ghost inhabiting a machine, and the machine is beginning to rust. The silence in your apartment at night is not peace, it is a weight. It is the sound of 1,000 unsaid things pressing against the walls, begging to be acknowledged. You try to write them down, but the pen feels heavy, and the paper remains mocking in its whiteness. You have spent so much energy pretending that everything is perfectly aligned that you have lost the ability to name your own suffering. You are not depressed in the clinical sense, perhaps, you are simply absent. You have become a background character in the narrative of your own life, serving only to facilitate the comforts and expectations of others. You look at your reflection in the darkened window, and you realize you don't recognize the person staring back. The eyes are familiar, but they are dull, lacking the fire of genuine desire or the sharpness of authentic anger. You have smoothed over all your edges to fit into a world that rewards consistency, but in doing so, you have sanded away the very parts of you that are capable of feeling connected to anything at all. You feel like a fragile ornament on a high shelf, pristine and untouchable, and God forbid you fall, because you are certain that you would shatter into a million pieces that could never be glued back together in the right order. The exhaustion is not just physical, it is a deep, marrow-aching weariness that stems from the constant, low-grade friction between who you are and who you show yourself to be. You crave the chaos of truth, yet you are terrified of it, because the truth is messy, and you have built your entire identity on the illusion of tidiness. You are terrified that if you finally admit to the cracks, the whole structure will collapse, leaving you exposed, raw, and utterly alone. And so, you keep performing. You tighten the strings, you paint on the smile, and you step back into the light, even as the darkness inside grows heavy enough to anchor a soul to the floor. But tonight, the silence has a different quality. It isn't just the absence of noise, it is the presence of an ending. You realize that the fear of being seen for who you really are is merely a defense mechanism designed to protect a version of you that doesn't actually exist. The tragedy isn't that you are flawed, or that you are struggling, or that you are exhausted. The tragedy is that you have mistaken the mask for the face. You have spent so much time tending to the image that you have neglected the human who needs to be held. You are not a structure that needs to be perfectly maintained. You are a living, breathing, disintegrating, and rebuilding process. And perhaps, the cracks are not the failure, perhaps they are the only honest things left. You realize that you don't need to be whole to be real. You don't need to be perfect to be enough. You are allowed to be fractured, to be tired, to be completely and utterly lost. And for the first time in a very long time, you stop trying to fix the mirror. You let it stay broken. The mask fits perfectly. The soul is starving beneath.